What is up, everybody? It's Rob here, coming at you with the Monday nightly watch list, and I'm live actually when Palantir and Hims are reporting their earnings report for the quarter. So we actually did just get Palantir's earnings numbers. They did just come out, and I saw that they did beat on their EPS numbers, and then the revenue did come in line. So Palantir, right, their revenue was plus 63% year over year. So as you're seeing right now, right, you had the initial earnings reaction, and Palantir is up about 2% after hours. Now, depending on how the conference call goes and how the market reacts to this, well, this could be a really big earnings, options killer because, I'm going to share my screen right now. Right, follow my X. That's where I post all this good information. But the earnings, right, we're actually implying a 8.5% move, right, which would be about $18 move on the stock. So, right, the options, right, they were implying that move. So, say for example, if you bought calls, well, if the market tomorrow morning doesn't open up Palantir, right, about 9%, well, those calls will actually lose value. Okay, so we're live when that's happening, right? Palantir, right, beat on their EPS, and estimate was 14 cents, came in at 21, and then the revenue was basically in line, right? Estimate was around $1 billion, came in at $1 billion. So there is your Palantir earnings, right? But I did want to share with you guys, right? All right, as we always do, what moved the market today, okay? So stocks did open up green, right? Futures markets were open green this morning. And that was primarily, right, based on this narrative of a U.S.-China trade truce, right? You had that Trump and President Xi meeting, and there wasn't too much news. So coming into this morning, right, that was the only thing really pushing the market up. And then you did see some profit taken on the day, as you can see in this left-hand chart here, right? This morning we opened up around 686, and all the way till 10:30, right, came down to 680. So right, you did have, a pretty decent move in the morning for a move down, and then, midday, just, after that selling in the morning, you just had a little bit of an intraday move up halfway, but pretty much a slow day, There was no major intraday news that came out. So basically just a morning sell-off, profit taken with a slight rebound, and then, we're still in earnings season, and the two big names right now are Hims and Palantir. So we did get Palantir earnings. Let's see if Hims did come out. I am looking at that. So yeah, we did get Hims earnings. As you can see, the stocks react. And the EPS came in at 6 cents a share versus 9-cent estimate, so they missed on that. And then the revenue came in at $599 billion versus a $580 million estimate. So there is your, numbers for that right now. And, you're still going to have to dig into a little deeper and wait for the conference call. But right now, if I look at it, Hims is up 5%. This is a 5% move from the close, and the actual implied move right now, as you can see, was 13.85%. So the market was expecting a really big move, and right now, right, TradingView is showing us down right around here that the stock's only up 4.33. So it looks like right now, depending on Palantir and Hims, big option burn. So maybe in the morning, right, we'll be able to get some cheap premium and to actually play. I do love playing earnings after they're released, right? Circumstantial, depending on how that premium looks. So keep your eyes open for that. But let's get back into the individual market recap. So like I was saying, right, it is earnings season, okay? So I have the earnings whisper for you here, okay? So as you can see here, Tuesday before the open, we have Uber, which is going to be a really big one because that is a significant position we have in our long-term portfolio. So if we come over here and then let's look at Uber stock real quick. So look, you can see today it ran up to $100 around the close, but the high for the all-time high for the stock was 102, And then, this is the historical price movement of the stock. So depending on how Uber goes here, I mean, it could absolutely crush it and just rocket up to new all-time highs, or maybe we get a pullback here. So to be determined based on, Tuesday's pre-market earnings. Then you also have Spotify, that's another big one, Pfizer. Look, you have AMD after the close on Tuesday. And then Wednesday before open is going to be big for us, Novo Nordisk. We own that in the long-term portfolio. And we're really excited about that because we have been building a position in this company over the year with our long-term deposits. And, the stock, right, did hit a low around $45, right, from its most recent sell-off, ran all the way up to 62. So, if this stock, Novo, tanks after earnings, I mean, that could be our next long-term portfolio addition. And I love it. I mean, we're going to be able to probably get Novo at dividend yield of over 4%. So that would be really awesome. And because I'm going to pull it up for you right now. Look, as you can see, it says the yield is at 2.38. Now, if you had a really big move after earnings, I mean, we could see, the dividend yield, would shoot up. And I'm thinking that might be our next long-term portfolio ad. So stay tuned. Wednesday, right before the market opens for Novo Nordisk. And right, you do have some other big names, right? Humana, McDonald's, but I am touching on the ones that are in our long-term portfolio. And then Six Flags, right, is this interesting one on Friday before the open. Because in a previous watch list, I gave you guys the headline that Six Flags, right, actually has some buyout rumors circulating. And Travis Kelce, right, he actually just recently invested in Six Flags. And they have had, right, a huge sell-off, historically speaking. Look, this is like a 3-year weekly chart. And you can see the low was at 20. And then it actually had a move up recently, right? See this big move up? Well, that was actually the news of like Travis Kelce getting involved, or, this activist company to make some changes. And the stock is sold off, right, from that headline. But going into earnings, I mean, that could be an interesting play. FUN Six Flags with Travis Kelce getting involved, activist investor, buyout rumors, and earnings. So there you go on that. And then here are some of the headlines, right, that came out today I have for you. So Walmart, right, Treasury Secretary Bessent said that the SNAP food benefits could restart by Wednesday. The Trump administration did come out today and say they will restart some of the funds for SNAP benefits. So, right, obviously, Walmart is a big name to watch on this. Not that I actually think it's going to move that much, right? Walmart is a slow mover, but, government shutdown and SNAP food benefits, historically speaking, and with data, we see that most of that money, around 25% of it, is spent at Walmart. So we do have that as a headline, maybe potentially move the stock. NVDA, right, was up over 2% pre-market because the U.S. approved sales of its chips to the UAE. So, right, it's opened up a market for the company, and stock was up 2% pre-market. And then our boy, Warren Buffett, Berkshire, they're up over, almost 1% pre-market. Their operating earnings jumped 34%. But what I wanted to share with you guys was that Warren Buffett bought back no stock of the company, and they raised their cash hoard to $381 billion. So Warren Buffett, right, is looking at Berkshire Hathaway stock right now, and he goes, you know what? We're not going to buy back our stock because we don't really think it's a good use of capital. So that's him kind of saying, hey, we think our stock is potentially overvalued. At the same time, they're just sitting on a massive, massive pile of cash. So, obviously that's kind of saying Mr. Warren Buffett doesn't see deep value in the market, which, he loves. And he's sitting on cash, waiting for, the big correction, big crash to come. And then you'll probably see Berkshire come in and start to deploy a lot of that cash. But there's the news for you there. I mean, just kind of tells you something about what Berkshire and Warren Buffett's been thinking about this market. And then I just wanted to remind you guys, the critical minerals, right? And you had this interview with Secretary Bessent come out, and he said, U.S. is not going to allow China, as he referenced it with, the sharp sword. He's not going to let China bully the U.S., right, by, having this over them, the critical minerals, export ban, or just that being able to be a card they can use on us. So even though this China-Trump, trade deal came through, keep your eye out on critical minerals, because the administration right now currently is still going to be, invested in these companies, and it's a important thing, so that that way we do not have to rely on China for critical minerals. So a lot of those names have been super volatile because there was a big rush before the China trade deal, right? Now you're seeing names come down after it, so a lot of volatility. So a sector of the market you could definitely play. So keep your eyes on that. And then, really the biggest news that we got pre-market was Amazon, right? They actually did a deal with NVDA for worth $38 billion. Well, this is actually three companies: Amazon, NVIDIA, OpenAI. But basically what happened was they're going to supply OpenAI, Amazon, roughly around $38 billion deal, because OpenAI will run its models on Amazon Web Services data centers, and then so basically OpenAI will be able to access NVIDIA chips through Amazon Web Services cloud. So when this headline first came out, it confused people because the headline was Amazon Inc.'s $38 billion deal with OpenAI to supply NVIDIA chips. Well, it's not like Amazon's actually going to sell OpenAI NVIDIA chips. No, they're just going to, rent out their data centers, right, the AWS segment, to OpenAI worth $38 billion. So Amazon stock was up pre-market, and that was a really big mover because Amazon just had earnings and actually crushed it. So as you can see from this chart here, well, this initial big move up was their earnings, and then you saw that earnings profit taken, a little move down, and then boom, another big move up just recently, and that was today, right? Pre-market coming into open today because of that OpenAI AI news. So that is what's going on with Amazon. Also, Tesla, keep your eye on Tesla. Tesla was actually running this morning because there's 3 days left on the shareholder vote for the Elon pay package. Which, if you guys haven't been following the market, basically Elon could get paid out a huge amount, but it has to be approved by votes. So if that happens, some people, want this to go through because it incentivizes Elon Musk to, make Tesla perform better. So the stock has been running up because people are betting that will get approved. So keep your eye on Tesla, all right, for the shareholder vote. And if you're not familiar, I can't go into details right now, but definitely look into that, and you'll be able to see what's going on with Tesla and why you had this huge move this morning, okay? So 3 days left for that shareholder vote, and then we will get our answer. Now, that is the news I have for you, okay? But let's get into the plays. All right, so what did I do today, and what am I looking at? Okay, well, first things first, right? In the morning, okay, we bought a SPY call that had an expiration of tomorrow, and we bought it for $184 and sold it for $311. So we made a great trade today on the SPY, which is the S&P 500 ETF. Now, if you look down here, I did take a screenshot of the chart, but right, like I was telling you guys today, right, the market kind of came down, had this big sell-off this morning, which you can see here. Primarily on no news, right? The market just opened green and it had this sell-off. And I was looking at the charts, and what I noticed was, right, you had this gap up, okay? You can look all on the left here, this gap up. And the market kept, looking to test that gap. But every time it came down, right, it would shoot up. So look, you can see relatively here in the past couple of days, right, these big red moves down and then a move up. Look, big red move down, a move up. And then that's exactly what happened today. So I was following that pattern where I went, okay, well, 680 is a huge support level, and we just had this big sell-off in the morning, and I don't really think this is going to continue. So I was like, let's just play the intraday, move up relief rally, buy the dip, people coming in, short selling, covering. So I got the 682 calls, right, because I wanted to play that move up, because I looked at the chart. I'm like, okay, well, it can probably go to 684. So let's go to the middle, 682. Let's get in the money. And that's exactly what we did. Now, If I would have went to today's expiration, I would have made over 100% on that trade. But, it was a lot of risk because, right, if that support would have cracked, because we got in at 680. So I bought a little bit more time just in case, that support cracked and the trade went against us. Then at least we could have had time tomorrow to position this trade. So we did play that move because, like I was telling you, it's been a slow day. There wasn't really that much news coming out besides pre-market. So I did play the 680 support for the bounce, and we killed it, right? We basically bottom ticked it. Now I'm going to show you from the options chain. So we're going to go to SPY, and then, right, you can see here the trade's down at the bottom. And what I did was I did the November 4th contract. You can see here, right? This is the proof, the 682 call. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a chart for it, so you can see. Dun, 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 dun. Down here, bottom right-hand corner. So as you can see, right, I got filled at 184, and the low of the day for the option contract was 182. So we perfectly bottom ticked it, and then we sold it for 311. So, right, if we go to 311, okay, basically right at the top of the day for the contract as well. And it came down and, basically closed around 246. And tomorrow when the contract opens, if the market doesn't open green, well, it's going to get theta burned, premium crushed. So we exited the trade up here, made a nice profit. And all in all, it was a great trade, just playing off of the, relief rally. So we did make that awesome trade today. And then, like I was telling you guys, some of the plays, fun earnings, right, is Friday, 11/7 before open. And don't forget about the Travis Kelce investment and buyout rumors. Now, the only problem with this was I was looking at the options chain for this today. I was looking at the premiums. And, the closest expiration is November 21st. So that's 18 days, right, before it expires. And, I wish there was some options that, expired sooner because we could get some cheaper premium. Because right now the 25 call, the ask is sitting at $1.40, so $140 to get into the trade. But if we pull this fun chart out, right, I mean, look, it ran up all the way to 27.50 on that, initial news, right? And like you can see here, a huge volume with that. So, I mean, honestly, to get the 25 call, you would be paying $1.50. And, with options, what you do is you take the strike and then you add it. Okay, so this is $1.40. So really your break-even price, right, if you were to buy it to ask right now, would be 26.40. So the stock would have to be at 26.40, theoretically, if you would exercise that option to make break-even. So, I mean, that would be sitting up at, the high here of where the stock is at. So what I'm thinking about doing is kind of waiting. Maybe, the stock will come down a little bit more, or, right, what's going to happen is you're going to get, premium theta burn coming into Friday. So maybe we can look at this contract again on, Thursday before the earnings and just watch the premium, right, for this 25 call. Okay, because the 30, I mean, that's a little too much to go that way out of the money. I mean, we're looking at it here now. This would be up to 30. Now that, would be a little much, I think, for a move. So I think the 25 call is definitely, the play. But, the premium's looking a little bit much. So, maybe it can get filled for cheaper. All right, see the bid sitting at 70. I think that is, an interesting play to keep your eye on. FUN, right? Earnings Friday and Travis Kelce rumor. Also, here we go. I do have some updates, right? Long-term portfolio, right? Obviously, we're following the news and we're making trades, but it's all about the long-term portfolio, right? The trades are on the side, but the long-term portfolio, right, is where we make our money. That is the big money maker. So, right, just recently we added Chipotle at $35, and I'm really interested in Novo Nordisk, like I was telling you, because they have earnings right before the bell Wednesday. Now, if the stock gets clapped on the earnings, then that is going to be our next long-term ad, right? So that's what I'm looking at. And then also Constellation Brands, okay? Now that has been coming down as well, and that could be potential next move. But these are definitely the top 3 candidates that I'm looking at for the long-term portfolio. And more than likely, I would be adding Novo if it does get clapped. I think that is going to be, our special stock of the year. We've been building a position in there, and I really like it heading into 2026. So keep your eyes open, right, on these names and Novo for earnings. And then, like I was telling you guys, watch out for the Christmas rally, all right? Welcome to November, baby. All right, before we know it, the year is going to be over. December is going to be here. And for those that don't know, historically speaking, December is a really bullish month because, as we know, the U.S. economy is based on consumption. Consumers going out, buying things, right, spending their money. That's how corporations make money, right, when you buy stuff. And what do you do in December? It's Christmas. So you go out, you buy gifts, right? Maybe you're traveling to see relatives, right? So there's a lot of money spending, and the market loves that, okay? So you see a really big Christmas rally coming into December, then the end of November. Okay, so keep your eyes peeled on that, right? It is earnings season right now, okay? So the market's watching all the earnings, but once, earnings ends and you stop getting these movements because of that, well, we're going to be coming into year end, and it's going to be the Christmas rally. So welcome to November, baby. And that is everything I have for you guys. So before we leave, all right, let's take a look again at Palantir and HIMS because, like I was telling you, they did just report their earnings. And let's see what is happening. So looks like Palantir didn't really make that much of a move. HIMS is up about 5.5%. And then Palantir, yep, basically break even, down 0.09%. So, right, as I was showing you here, if that stays the way it is, you're going to get a premium crush on the earnings. So anyone that played calls or puts, absolutely killed because, right, the way options work is, well, they know that a big move is going to be coming because of the earnings report's going to move the market. So the premium for those options are more expensive. So you always want to look at the implied move, right, on an options contract before earnings, because then you're actually going to see, well, how much does the stock really have to move, and then some, right, just to, make money or move up even more. So, guys, that is what I have for you today. As always, get the long-term portfolio, right? Look at the names I was just talking about and make great trades, okay? Follow the news. We get the fastest news in the world here, and we make great trades. And guys, it's almost December. I hope you guys are having, a great start to your week. Stay locked in. Let's get to the money. Let's go. Peace out.